welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Free Expression Friday series, an interview series from ABA's American Booksellers for Free Expression, celebrating the amazing work of booksellers, organizers, and book people in general, fighting for the right to read.
Hi, it's Philomena from ABFE. Before we get to this week's interview, a quick update on what's happening in book bans this week. The American Booksellers Association and American Booksellers for Free Expression are proud to join more than 50 organizations representing parents, authors, publishers, booksellers, librarians, and more in signing a letter expressing concern with the Trump administration's executive order of January 20th targeting transgender, non-binary, intersex, and gender nonconforming people. The order will lead to viewpoint-based censorship of literature if it is allowed to stand. Meanwhile, state legislatures are heating up, with several bills related to book bans receiving hearings in the coming week in committee, which is often where their fates are determined. Here are some bills that you can weigh in on in the next week. In Connecticut, SB 1271, which is a bill banning book bans, will be heard on February 13th. In Colorado, SB 63, which is another bill banning book bans, will be heard on February 10th. In New Hampshire, HB 10, which is a parental bill of rights including a vague right to object to material which could lead to bans, will be heard on February 18th. If you'd like to get involved on any of these bills and you live or work in the state in question, reach out to me at abfe@bookweb.org. That's ABFE@bookweb.org. Okay, and now on to my conversation with Jeannine Cook, who is the shopkeeper of Harriet's, Ida's, and Josephine's in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Paris. I am here with Jeannine Cook, the shopkeeper of Harriet's, Ida's, and Josephine's bookshops. Jeannine, can you just maybe introduce yourself and say a little bit about your journey to opening these shops?
Well, first, let me say thank you. Thank you for the invite to come have a conversation and be in community with you. Thanks for considering us in all things. It's a huge opportunity to just be able to share. So thank you for that. And then I'll say, I'm Jeannine A. Cook. My middle initial is A. And I have the profound opportunity to be the shopkeeper of several bookshops: Harriet's Bookshop, Ida's Bookshop, Josephine's Bookshop, all named for different women in history. And the bookshops are interesting in that they sit at this intersection of being bookshops, but also like monuments in a way. In some ways, some people have called them altars. They're also in some ways like art galleries, because if you ever come to the bookshop, they're never the same bookshop twice. So they're always changing and adapting, because we take the bookshops and we take a book and imagine what it would feel like as a shop. And so, for instance, we turned Ida's into a juke joint in honor of the color purple, or we turned Harriet's into a 2D drawing when the 1619 project came out. Right now, Harriet's is dipped in blue, and we call it, I've been calling it Blue Magic, or the Blue Note, which is like this off-key note that is known to happen in Black music. So yeah, we're experimenting, we're innovating, and also enjoying being a part of the tradition.
Oh, I love all that. And, who among us does not think of bookstores as also monuments and also altars at times? That is so wonderful. I would love to, if you could just say a little bit about the women who the stores are named for. Why those three? What was it about those three that particularly attracted you?
The way I see it is that they called to me.
Mm-hmm.
I just answered the phone, but they called, and I think Harriet was the first one. I've been in conversations with Harriet for a long time, since I was probably in about the third grade.
Mm.
And for a lot of my life, I've had this kind of relationship with her where I've written her letters. And I just since I was a little girl, considered her to be this iconic figure of like who was a human, right? So sometimes you get these superheroes and they're not human, and so it's a little bit difficult to try to be like them because they were, they're supernatural. But here you have this woman with all this supernatural ability, but who was very much a human being who walked and talked just like you and I. And so Harriet, I think, opened the portal, the gate, and then over time, it kind of attuned my ear to be able to be in conversation with other women. And so that's kind of how Ida came into to be, and Josephine. And with each of these women, it's interesting. It's almost like they send me on a pilgrimage of their life. So I have to go back to their childhood homes. I have to, study and like get to know their family members, and
Hmm.
like I do an intense research, and also then think about how to embody their spirit in a bookshop.
I love that. And I guess I should gloss for anyone who's not picking up on the references. I assume this is
Yes.
Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, and Josephine
Correct.
Baker.
Correct. And then
Right.
we've had like some pop-ups, like we did a Tony's bookshop at Princeton University.
Mm.
They opened her archive. So that one was like a temporary installation, where we took the bluest eye and turned it into a bookshop. So you were in a bedroom of the main character. Or we've done like a Zora's bookshop as well, where you were like in a kind of like a hoodoo shop.
Uh,
Um, and we did that at the University of the Arts. So we like I said, we're having a there's some I've been describing it as literary art because it kind of fits into multiple categories in this interesting way.
that's amazing. And speaking of Toni Morrison, her Bluest Eye is consistently one of the most banned books in the United States.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you're doing this work at such an important moment where people really need to lean into not only Black books, but Black bookstores. And because Black books are being attacked, the place of Black people in literature, I would say, is being very deliberately attacked. And
Hmm.
there's so many ways that someone can push back against that. As a reader, as a writer, we'll come back to writer, librarian, publisher. But what made book selling the way that you wanted to channel these people and do this amazing work?
Yeah, I would say, shouts to the librarians. My mother was a librarian when I was a little girl.
Oh, wow.
My mother went blind when I was about 10 years old, and that never stopped her from being an avid reader. And still to this day, she's an avid reader of audiobooks. So there's just being in the environment of people who understand and love story, and love storytelling, and love, and appreciate books and words. But then I think it's also a matter of seeing like, well, what is a win-win, right? What can you do in a community that's a win-win, right? So many products you could sell in your community, but they don't necessarily have um, a positive effect on the community. Whereas books, there's no losing. Everyone wins. The authors win, the booksellers win, the reader wins. Um, because books just have that ability to change and transform lives. I think one of the things that I've been, positively obsessed with is this idea of community and community building. I came from, before I got to Philly, I lived in Hampton, Virginia. I lived in a place where people literally knew your name on the block, where we ate food at each other's homes. It was just a normal thing to like walk in and out of each other's houses and not lock the doors. And so when I got to Philly, like that has always been stuck with me, is this like idea of community being this really safe and loving space where we share and we take care of each other, and we ask each other how are you, and we really want to know what the answer is. And I've sought to create spaces like that ever since. And so the bookshop, I believe, is in a direct, you know, a direct, it's a direct lineage to that approach of how to build community. I think part of it, especially when you think about like in Black communities, is institutions that have, um, that have that kind of like our indigenous practices built in, that we don't have to reform these institutions because they were built with those practices in mind.
And speaking of community, how has the community response been to these shops and to all the things that you're doing?
Oh, overwhelming. It's been an overwhelmingly beautiful response. I could never ask for more. And it, again, back to like thinking about Harriet and Ida and these women who I feel guided by. I could never do these things on my own. It is working in community that we've been able to get them done, right? Uh, whether that be like the over 100,000 social media followers that we've garnered through the work, whether that be, the hundreds of people who come in and out of the doors. Sometimes just to, there's some people who just come just to, bring their dog by to get a treat. There are people who just come because they're looking for a quiet place to be. There are people who come just to check on us and make sure we're okay. So there's been a lot of love uh, that has walked in and out of these doors, and so I appreciate being the shopkeeper of work like that.
And Jeannine, I said I would come back to writing. You just told me that you have a novel coming out and another one kind of queued up after that. That's
Sure,
so
yeah,
exciting.
it's
Can you
very
dish?
cool. Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, so again, I've been writing my whole life, but it's very awesome to join the ranks of book selling author. And
Mhm.
so what happened is I was trying to sell a memoir about the journey to the bookshops because in many ways I feel like it's been a magically realistic journey, right? Like with these women that have been guiding me, and you can kind of see all these amazing coincidences and all the women who also work together to bless the bookshop, whether that be especially Philly authors like Sonia Sanchez and Lorraine Carey and Erica Dunbar Nelson. Like there's been so many people who have supported what we do here. Um, but I thought I was selling a memoir. I went to sell the memoir, and I got feedback from the publisher that they would like to see it done as a novel. And I was like, "What?" Right? Because if you write nonfiction and have somebody tell you write me a novel, it's like I don't really know how to write a novel. And so my agent, who's amazing, my agent is Marie Brown. She's been an agent longer than I've been alive. She tells me all the time, like she's been in the book industry for 60 years. So she comes with that breadth of knowledge, but she also came with the knowledge and wisdom to say, Jeannine, I believe you can do this. And so just having somebody like that who's been in the industry for a very long time say, I believe in you and I believe in your talent and ability. So we said yes, we'll write the novel. And the novel, the idea is that you're in a bookshop universe, and if it does well, which we hope it will be a series where you'll be inside of all of our different bookshops and see the worlds that kind of unravel, or not unravel, that's not the right word, unfold right before our eyes, just because we're in the bookshop, right? We meet so many people, we make so many connections for people, and love connections happen all the time in the bookshop. So it's a fun series. And so the novel should come out in September, and then the memoir should come out shortly after that.
Amazing. Do you have titles yet?
The novel is called It's Me They Follow.
Ah, beautiful. It's me they follow.
It's
You
me
heard
they
it here
follow.
first.
This is probably the first place you heard it for sure.
Okay, great. Great. Well, I mean, yeah, it's going to be catnip for me and so many other
Yeah,
book world
I
people.
can't wait can't wait to hear what you think.
I will let you know. Um,
hmm
and so to pivot a little bit, we're chatting during the first week of Black History Month. Is that something that you do anything with in the stores? Tell me a little bit about how you think about that.
Yeah. I mean, well, in some ways our shops are always that, right? All year long,
Hmm.
that's what we offer. Our bookshops celebrate women authors, women artists, women activists, not to the exclusion of anyone else, but that we do center those voices. And so all year long we're doing that work. But during this time of year, we start thinking about, well, how can we support other businesses? How can we support, in Philly at least, we started something called a trolley tour where we would take our customers. You would start here at Harriet's, and we would take you to 5 other Black women-owned businesses in Philadelphia, right? So it became like an opportunity for us to support businesses that folks, maybe they're new, maybe they're, struggling, maybe they're, whatever the case may be during this time of year. It's very difficult for small business. And so during Black History Month and Women's History Month, we have a tour that takes people out to visit other businesses, right? Because it's not enough for us to be doing well. We need to be a part of a very healthy ecosystem. At least that's how I see it. And so we've done that for the last 3 years. I think this will be our 4th year running the tours. Um, and then, this year I had the thought that I wanted to host a dinner party for some of my closest friends and for us to share about it's called Deeply Rooted. So we'll host the dinner party in the bookshop, but again, for us to share about our own family history, our own roots. I think sometimes Black History Month we think about like these really larger than life figures, but I'm interested in us really digging into our own extraordinary and ordinary history and sharing that. And so we'll be doing that on Saturday. And hopefully that'll become a tradition as well. My father recently passed away, so he passed away in October. And so again, it's a chance for us to share about our own ancestors, to highlight the people in our families who've whatever their contributions were, and to call them forth and have them be in the space with us. And so I'm looking forward to hosting that as well.
That's so beautiful. And quickly, is for the tour that you were talking about and stuff, how can people who are
Yeah.
nearby learn more about that?
Yeah, anybody, you can follow us on social. We're on all the social medias. And the tours have gotten really cool. They've gotten really cool media. So they've been covered by Essence magazine and Black Enterprise, and they've gotten really cool national media. So if you Google it, it'll come up. Harriet's Bookshop Trolley Tours. And then we expanded it, so now we're doing it also in New Jersey. Um, and it went from being like a trolley tour to being like a village marketplace. And so it's funny how your work leads you in the directions where it wants you to go, because it keeps growing and expanding. And again, not by myself. I do nothing by myself ever, ever, ever. I have an amazing team of people everywhere I go. So in Philly, there's a great team that makes it happen, and in Jersey, there's a great team that makes it happen. Hopefully, one day we can bring the tour to Paris. I just got back from Nairobi last week because, not this year, but in 26, we have plans to do a bookshop for Wangari Maathai, who is a woman, a Kenyan woman, the first African woman to ever win a Nobel Peace Prize for her work around trees and sustainability. And so, just like Harriet took me to Maryland to go look at her land, and Ida took me to Mississippi to go look at her land, and now Wangari has taken me to Nairobi to go be in her land and build relationships. And so it's a beautiful journey that I find myself on. And also, you see now why I write books about it, because it's so
Hmm.
amazing.
I was just thinking, I can't wait to read the memoir.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's really cool the way it unfolds.
And just as an approach to Black History Month and Women's History Month, it's so interesting and inspiring to kind of go beyond your own walls and to try to sort of build those networks and that attention economy and sharing it with other businesses. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
No,
And,
absolutely. I mean, and then the other thing that we found year after year when we host the tour, our businesses close down, right? And so we're like,
mhm.
this is whether people notice it or not. There's a public health emergency around Black owned businesses and their success, right? Like when you think about it, if you think of how many businesses can you name, especially Black owned businesses that have lasted generations in our country, and there are not many of them, especially locally, especially small businesses. Like, where are they? And there's something. It's something to like be in the scene and watch how it happens time and time again. Where from the first year to the second year of the tour, three of those businesses shut down in that year, and then the next year, another two shut down, and one of our participants passed away, and then the next year another passed. So then there's like the levels of stress that go along with running a small business, especially as a Black woman in this country. And so, like, all of those things that I don't think we don't talk about that much. Like, we celebrate Black-owned businesses, especially during Black History Month. But really, really, there's some huge barriers that I don't think we're addressing as a society.
Yeah, because of course that's the paradox with Black History Month and with Women's History Month and Native American Heritage Month and Pride Month. It's like
But
these months do draw this much needed attention.
right, but
But at
just
the
for that
same
month.
exactly, yeah, and it's like on in the other months as people's attention kind of wanders away,
Yeah.
stores are closing. So
Yeah.
the question that I want to pose to you and that I'll be exploring with other uh, conversations throughout this month and beyond is how can folks support Black-owned businesses and Black-owned bookstores in particular year round?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a great question, and I'm so glad you're asking it because it's something that I've been like, getting on my soapbox about as much as possible. And I think that it really does come down to institutional support and policy, right? And so what we know is that, yes, of course, on a day-to-day level, an individual can come in and buy a book or even buy a few books, and of course we appreciate that. But there's an institutional support that we need to see in order to sustain long term. And what I mean by that is, well, where are your local universities getting their books from? Where are your local schools and hospitals getting their books from? And when you look at those institutions, typically they're not shopping at their local small businesses, right? You see very large, big box, big names on university campuses. Why isn't the university partner with the local bookshop? That makes total sense to me. Um, but it's kind of a thing that's just like going over people's heads. And I think that when we talk about building an ecosystem, that's what it takes. It takes for us to all to be thinking locally from within the institutions that we work in or support. Where your children go to school, where does the school get the books from?
Hmm.
And making it a mandate that, even if you don't stop working with the big boxes, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do on that front, but having equal support for your local institutions because that's how you keep them going.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Amazon's money is not going back into the local economy in the ways that a local business is. And,
Right,
it's not enriching the community in the way that your stores are enriching your community.
right.
And it's you were talking about win-wins before. That's a win-win,
It's a total win-win.
but people pass it up for no good reason. So
Yeah, and I think
love
it's
that.
sometimes it's just a matter of us like we're just kind of on rope. We're on automation sometimes, and so it's like, okay, get this done. What's the cheapest? Da da da. And it's just like, well, the cheapest option is not always the least expensive. I'll say that, right?
Yeah.
And so you're paying for it whether you know it or not. And so there's something that you could be paying into And again, I'm speaking on an institutional level because a lot of individuals already think this way, but the institutions that they operate, run, or are participants in, it doesn't work that way from that lens. And that's what I'm pushing for nonprofits and universities and hospitals, like all of these places that are they have books, they have libraries. There was I got into a small back and forth with a local librarian because she was hosting an event. I said, okay, I think I know somebody who might want to sponsor the books for that event. She said, oh great, thank you. So I get the sponsor, I connect everybody up, and then they buy the books from a large big box. And I was just like, I don't understand that rationale, that thinking, right? Like your local bookshop is right here. I'm the one who gave you the sponsor, right? It would make the most sense to then support your local bookshop.
Yeah.
Libraries are buying books all the time, and you're spending taxpayer dollars. It's not as though it's your personal out of your personal purse anyway. So it's just a matter of getting folks to think about the bigger picture here.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good way of putting it because I think if people stopped and thinked, they, you know,
Yeah.
they would
It's,
probably make the right decision.
yeah,
But as you
it's an
said, it's just
obvious
automatic.
decision. It's obvious, especially when I think if you spoke to any of the small businesses, we're happy to try to meet the demand. We're happy to try to meet the price point as much as we can, especially if we know we're going to have a consistent and returning customer. But the other side of it, I think, is also policy, right? And so the amazing thing about having a bookshop in Philly and then having one in Jersey and then having one in Paris is I get to compare and contrast rules and laws. And what I recognize from being in Paris is there's a really different way that the French think about books and bookshops as institutions, and there's a different way that they support them as a form of cultural heritage, not just another retail business. And so I think bookshops fit in a very unusual box because we're not completely, we shouldn't be treated as just like an average retail business because we are cultural heritage, most of
Mhm.
us. We are cultural preservation, most of us, right? Harriet sells new, used, and rare books. Um, and so it's just something to think about because in when I'm in Paris, there's a very different approach to how to care for books and bookshops that hopefully our lawmakers here will start to think about and adapt and adopt.
Yeah, amen to that. So we are all now excited about your books. I want to I want to ask you my favorite question, which is what books are you excited about right now?
Oh man, I love that question too. So I'll tell you what I'm reading. I'm reading James because everyone's like, you have to read James.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, okay, it's winning every award. Why?
Mhm.
And so that's I'm on that journey and it's been fun. And then I was reading Out of Africa because again, I'm like have my head all in Nairobi space.
Mhm.
Um, and then I really always try to, anytime I'm on a public platform, I try to promote Philly authors because I feel like that's our responsibility as Philly
Yes,
bookshops,
please.
right? And so Sadiqa Johnson, who's a Philly author, she wrote The House of Eve. She does historical fiction. She also did The Yellow Wife. She was also my professor. So shouts to Sadiqa. Um, of course, like I said earlier, Sonia Sanchez, who's a living legend, 90 years old. I'll interview her on Saturday, no, Friday with WURD, our local radio station, which is a huge privilege and honor to be able to even sit in the same airspace as her. Could when I think about a 90-year-old author, a 90-year-old writer, right, and how much they've seen and how many people they've known and how much, there's things that she knows that you could never Google, right? You could never ask Chat GPT for the answers because those stories only live in her head, and so that's really amazing. Um, and then I like to give a shout out to Ursula Rucker and Yolanda Wisher. These are all like local authors who are doing amazing things. Um, Lorene Carey, who I is a mentor of mine, the very first author to ever read in the bookshop. Um, Joe Piazza, who's Philly and always supports the bookshops as well. So, those Jennifer Weiner, there are people who've been very, very supportive who are also very Philly. And so I like to always give them their airtime.
I love that. I love that. Jeannine, thank you so much for your time and for everything that
Oh,
you're doing.
I love it.
It's,
It's the
it
best job in
put
the
the
world.
wind in my sails today. I'm sure that that's true of some of the people who are listening too.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for thinking of me. We really, really, like I said in the beginning, we appreciate any opportunity to share about our mission and anybody who wants to find us. We're on all the socials, Harriet's Bookshop, Ida's Bookshop, Josephine's Bookshop. Yeah, and please stay tuned for Jeannine's book coming soon. The first one is called It's Me They Follow.
Amazing. All right. Jeannine, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!